The backup recording has started. Tweeting about it now. I think we are live and good to go. All right, here we go. I'm starting the recording in 3, 2, 1.
जब स्कॉट सर अपने परिवार के साथ आदिलाबाद आए थे तो एक छोटी बच्ची को ले आए। वो दरअसल गोंडों की बच्ची है।
तो उनके सर पे सींग होते हैं क्या?
एक गडरिया होता है।
That was from the trailer for RRR, the newest film by director S.S. Rajamouli. You're listening to the Filmcast. Joining us today for our review of RRR, she is film critic and editor at Slashfilm.com. Hoai-Tran, welcome back to the Filmcast.
Thanks for having me back. I'm ready to go.
Oh my God.
Are you? Yeah. How many R's are in that ready?
Yeah, you know, just the typical amount, 3. The only amount that we'll be using from now on.
For every R word, yes.
Folks who have listened to the podcast for more than 2 weeks may recall Hoai-Tran was just here on the podcast a couple weeks ago when we reviewed Men, Alex Garland's Men. Probably about as far away from this movie as you can get in terms of tone and message, I guess. The reason she's back is because during that review she said, hey, if you ever discuss RRR, feel free to invite me back. And I was like, okay, well, we're discussing RRR in a couple weeks. So invited you back on HT and glad to have you back on the show.
I'm glad to be back. I'm really excited to talk about this movie. I think the reaction to this will definitely be different than what we had for Men.
Definitely. Now, before we begin, I do just want to say that we are gonna, every person here will bring some of their own context to discussing this movie, which, by the way, according to the plot summary, is about a tale of 2 legendary revolutionaries and their journey far away from home.
It occurs to me, hearing HT talk, that if you swapped the titles of these movies, it still would work. This movie could be called Men, and that movie could be called RRR. Yeah.
It wouldn't make any sense for that movie, but
I
think hard R.
I think it would work. I think it would work.
For all the Rory Kinnears.
Yes,
all the Rorys.
Rory Kinnears. That's right.
Yeah.
Rory. It stands for Rory in that one. Yeah, that's right. Anyway, so we'll each bring our own context to this movie, but I do just want to say that there is a high likelihood that there are some things that we will miss in terms of the political and the cinematic context behind this movie. I do want to point people to an awesome article that Matt Goldberg tweeted out, which is at a newsletter called Letters from Limbo. And it's written by a person named Ritesh Babu. It's entitled Unpacking RRR, Indian Politics and Cinema. It's like a 30-minute long article that lays out all the context, or much of the context, behind the making of this film and the cinematic environment in which it's getting into. And I'd recommend people read this.
Did you just describe an article as by its time?
Yes.
30-minute article?
Yeah, 30-minute long article. I don't know. It's like 10,000 words or something. It's very long, but it is very well worth it because it's like, wow.
That's how Dave sees everything, by the way. Like, how much of my life will this take?
An article on his TikTok.
Yes.
I think he just threw the gauntlet down to somebody get through that article faster than
Dave.
Get
through it faster than 30 minutes. That's right. But yeah, I mean, this is super valuable, and it's basically like, wow, there is 99% of this article I did not know before I read the article, and it basically lays out like who these people are, who these actors are, who these characters are in the mythology, and there's just a lot we don't know. But we will try to make our way through it as best we can and talk about this purely as a cinematic experience. That's certainly something we can definitely do here on the podcast.
Yeah.
So, Hoai-Tran, let's start with you. Why is it that you wanted to come back to talk about this movie? Tell us about your feelings on this film.
Well, boys, how would you like to topple imperialism with the power of friendship?
Love it. Love it. I would love to.
RRR is a movie that completely snuck up on me. I can't say that I have a finger on the pulse of Indian cinema, much less Telugu cinema, which this comes from. This can't be mistaken for Bollywood. It's part of Indian cinema, but they are one of the many languages and one of the many genres within Indian cinema. So this was not really on my radar until a good friend of mine and a good friend of yours, Dave, Patrick Willems, was tweeting up a storm about this movie, and he too was turned on to this film by Siddhant Adlakha, who I would also like to point anyone to his writings about this movie. It's really great, and he's been kind of tooting the horn for RR for like several months now.
Yeah, I read his review at IndieWire, and he also co-wrote Patrick Willems' video essay about this film. So would recommend all those things as well. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I went to a screening with them. They were basically just inviting all of New York film Twitter to come and see it with them. And it was one of the best theatrical experiences I've ever had. It maybe permanently altered my brain chemistry.
As any good movie should,
as
like
any
that's
good
a
movie
sign.
This movie has everything, and not to sound like a Bill Hader sketch, but it's a historical epic, it's an action epic, it's a romance, it's a buddy comedy, it's a propaganda film, it's the most maximalist depiction of homoerotic hyper masculinity that I've ever seen put to the screen. And it's like if a filmmaker had the thought of, hey, what if every single thing that has been done on the big screen in film, what if I just threw it all together into a pot and just like threw it at the screen in this movie? And that's what this movie is like. It's like a visual extravaganza. It's so operatic that I can't speak properly.
It's like if you took the handshake meme from Predator, right, which is actually a recurring symbol throughout this movie, and made that into an entire movie. Just like two muscular arms gripping each other in friendship. That is RRR.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, there's so
men
many
bonding through the power of their own masculinity.
There's so many analogies that I can vaguely grasp at to try to sort of discuss the context of this movie. Like the best I could think of would be like if it's like Tom Hanks and not Tom Hanks, sex symbol Tom Cruise and Will Smith were playing like Batman and Superman, right? And they're like together on the big screen. Like it would be like that level of event was the sense I got reading about this film, in terms of just like who these actors are, like and how big of a deal they are, and also the characters that they play in this movie are.
Well, there were rumors in the 80s of two different things that almost happened. One of them was Schwarzenegger and Stallone at the height of their popularity being in one film together. Like the heat of 80s action movies.
Right.
Right. The other thing that very nearly almost happened was Prince was almost in the Beat It video fighting against Michael Jackson. Now, this movie is both of those things at the same time.
Yes, that's a pretty good analogy. So yeah, just kind of the movie itself is a big deal. Let alone, and then it's as if Michael Bay and John Woo co-directed it, basically.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Basically,
pretty much.
Basically,
is kind of what we're
Michael
left
Bay
with.
and John Woo fought over direct, like we're actively fighting in the direction of it. Like,
yes. Now, obviously, the analogy is imperfect. We're just using our Western lens to try to like comprehend the magnitude of this film. But like, these are the things that came to mind in trying to like describe this movie to other people. All that said, Devendra Hardwar, what were your thoughts on RRR?
I mean, I loved it. I completely loved it. Yeah, this movie represents everything I love about movies. And I think I felt kind of sad because I did hear HT, like how you guys were going to all these screenings together in New York and just like having a grand old time in a crowded theater. I was like, man, I would love to see that. I think in Patrick's video, he has footage he shot of people like, I think it's his footage, right? Of people just like dancing in the aisles during the Natu Natu song. And it's just like, yeah, I want that level of insanity while seeing this movie. So yeah, I had a blast with it. I don't. I've seen some of the Bahubali movies. I haven't even finished them. I know they're well known for their scale and the kind of insanity of the action. And yeah, this movie just absolutely delivers. I think it is. It reminds me of a lot of things. So many movies I love kind of wrapped into one and one like 3 hour long epic. Visually it's absolutely stunning. I feel like it's notable that this is like the most expensive Indian film ever made, and even then like it pales in comparison to like most Hollywood movies, right? I think like the conversion is maybe 75 million or so for a movie to look this big, but it's still so like magnificent.
I mean, it looks like it costs 275 million, you know?
It does, except for the CG. Except for like if you wanted to like, unfortunately there are a lot of like giant animals and they have to be CG, and it's not that great. But you know what? Even Hollywood movies can't do that too great sometimes, as we've seen in the MCU. I love the maximalist filmmaking in this thing. Like I think like that's the main thing here. Like this movie can never go soft, really, or can never like be subtle about things. Everything has to be huge and big and boisterous. You have to have way too many people in the shot. Everything has to look enormous, and I think that is fantastic. Certainly I was enjoying this. Like this movie has like what titles 30-40 minutes in,
40 minutes in, almost exactly the same as Drive My Car.
Yeah, like, and
I
these
cheered
movies
for both
certainly
of those
relate to each
movies.
other.
Yes.
Yeah, certainly. Drive My Car was a maximalist, like emo epic, and same thing here. I clapped in both occasions because like the sheer amount of energy that it took to get to that point is just so wild. It is everything. Like the dancing is fantastic, and the filmmaking around doing the action sequences and the dances it's just as impressive too. Like we talk about how some action sequences are basically dance choreography, right? And what's so clear about Rajamala like knows what he's doing here, but he shows full people dancing. Like he shows the full body, he shows their legs, and the Natu Natu dance is just an incredible sight to behold. Like this movie does so many things well. I'm kind of like I have a hard time like picking any holes at it. I wish the CG were a little better. I wish it didn't come out at a time where like pro-Indian stuff in general feels a little icky to me. Like there's a lot going on in India, but overall, this is a hell of a ride, and I have to go see all the Bahubali movies now too.
I would agree with you, Devindra, that it does feel a bit of a bummer that we didn't see, like, I don't know. I don't think any of us, the three of us on the main podcast, saw the movie in theaters.
I couldn't.
Saw it
which
in
is
my
a
theater.
huge bummer. And we also saw it on Netflix, where it is one of the top 10 films in the country right now. Unfortunately, the only version that is on Netflix is a Hindi dub. It is not the Telugu version. I believe that version is being held back to drive subscribership to a streaming service that actually has the Telugu version. So
it's also very expensive. Like it's more expensive, but that kind of makes sense.
It's a bummer that we're not. So we're seeing kind of like a compromised version of it, because it's not in theaters and it's also the Hindi version. Speaking of the CG, I actually thought the animal CG was very solid. We just finished watching Jurassic Park 1 for the After Dark recently, and I was like, this is better CG than Jurassic Park 1 in my opinion.
Than the first movie to ever
from
do.
like 30 years.
Yes, and one of the first movies to
about
ever
that.
do full creature CGs. Yes, that's right.
And
that's
even
right.
then, I would I would debate you there because we
Way
know
better
how
than-
tigers move.
Way better than Nanook of the North, Dave.
The Lumiere brothers have shit
Yeah.
on this movie.
Far more realistic than that train that was coming towards us.
I
So-
do think though, with the sort of shaky CGI, and it's not at all realistic. I feel like it kind of fits the heightened aspect of this movie, because it's like these people are punching tigers and just like throwing tigers and throwing motorcycles at each other. Like they are superheroes. I
As
kind
you
of
do.
expect them to live in a cartoon world.
I mean, I really knew I was going to love this movie because it begins with a massive title card that says there's nothing that, this whole thing is fictional, so don't get bent out of shape about it. It is then immediately followed by the following title that says, disclaimer, No animals or birds were harmed during the making of the film. Horses, oxen, birds, tigers, wolves, bears, leopards, deer, fish, and snake shown in the movie are all computer generated, end quote.
Yeah, talk about raising expectations right at the beginning.
That is then immediately followed by...
It gives you a bingo card right at the top.
It's like the Top Gun opening titles, like, listen, this is an elite school and this is an elite film, and we did not harm these animals, but it sure looks like we did. Get ready for it.
You're gonna see a leopard. You're gonna see a snake. You're gonna see. There's a lot in this movie. Just sit back, pal.
I am holding out for the oxen. That's what I was really looking forward to. Is like, what is the oxen going to do in this movie? Jeff Kanata, I am so curious. What did you think of RRR?
Well, Dave. Before I do that, I got to tell you, I know, I'm sure I'm not saying it fast enough to stop the tweets and emails that we've already gotten. I recognize it was not the Beat It video. It was the bad video that Prince was supposed to be in. Not Beat It. It was bad. I'm sorry. I know I got it wrong. I knew it immediately as I said it, but I didn't want to interject while everybody was talking. The bad video that Prince turned down, it could have been them fighting each other, dance fighting each other.
It was Wesley Snipes instead. Yeah.
But I guess you could say my feelings about RRR are best summed up in the form of a limerick.
Hit us, Jeff.
This limerick will fail to express the fun friendship and awesomeness. 3 hours and dubbed. If you're Netflix subbed, you should you make time to watch it? Hell yes!
Nice.
Woo!
I kind of messed that up. But yeah, I mean, everything Devendra said, everything HT said, everything Dave said, but like more for me, more a little. This movie starts on 11 and then goes up from there. This is a movie that made me sad. I mean, I love doing the show with you guys. I absolutely love doing the show with you guys, but it made me sad that I wasn't still doing the Totally Rad show because this is the Totally Rad show as a movie.
It makes you want to go back in time to co-hosts you like better.
No.
That's
it's
how
not
important.
that.
It's how powerful this movie is.
the ethos, the feelings, the raison d'etre of the Totally Rad show is what this movie is about. It's broing out so hard. It's loving things on 11. We made that show as a sort of a celebration of just, being friends and loving stuff. And, every time our fists came together in that show, they exploded, right? That's this movie in a nutshell. Is like anytime their fists come together, it is an explosion, and both of love and of action. It is so much fun. It actually feels to me like a movie and its sequel all in one. Like you get what feels like a real hard stop down in the middle of this movie. It feels like two 90-minute movies shoved together. And there's like this real hard stop down where it's like, okay, now we're going to do a flashback and kind of reset and like, go back in time and check it. And so, if you're put off by the 3-hour runtime, I think it makes a great 2 90-minute sittings movie experience. I did watch it in my home theater, which has great sound and a big screen. And man, this movie rocks. The music is awesome. This is the kind of movie where at the beginning, there's a song that literally is telling you everything it's like raising questions like, is it gonna turn out this way? It's like, are they gonna
find out?
Yeah, you better watch and the movie's not over. So it wears its heart on its sleeve. Like the love affair, the like actual love affair between these guys is so wonderful. I mean, it is so goofy and fun. It maybe has the best friendship montage sequence in the history of cinema.
And
the best
it plays out like a
meet-cute,
rom-com montage.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's why it's so amazing. You're like, they're falling in love. They love each other.
Hardcore love falling.
But like totally earnest. Totally
earnest.
There's
Right.
not a hint of irony in that entire sequence.
And that's what I love the most about this movie. Truly, from start to finish. it is earnest. It is earnest about its feelings about the politics. It's earnest about its feelings about how these guys feel about each other, about what is good and what is bad. And it is not cynical in any way. And I love that about it. I just love how hard it goes. And man, for all of the over the top, incredible action, and I'm sure we'll call out a lot of it specifically in spoilers, but for all of it, I think my favorite sequence in the whole movie is the dance sequence. It's dance as a fight. It is dance as a test of endurance. It is dance till you literally drop. And it also is storytelling. It's also
storytelling. Dance is character.
Dance is
beat the
character.
bully.
Dance as a way of toppling imperialism and
Yes.
and white society, which was
Yes.
also
But
amazing.
can you flamenco?
But
How-
also, but also dance is like, there's the dance equivalent of jumping in front of a bullet. It's like, and also the pure physical prowess of it is incredible. Like, these guys are incredible action stars, totally pull off the action. And yet also they are doing an amazing amount of dancing. And I mean, I don't know if this is sort of a staple of Bollywood. I haven't watched enough to know it, but I guess there's some intention to never show them be out of breath or fatigued or like,
Oh, no.
or
You gotta
even take a breath. Like, they never
It's,
take a breath.
Well, this type of movie, and specifically, as HT mentioned, this is not Bollywood. This
Yeah.
is like a whole separate thing.
Oh, pardon me.
There's multiple Tollywoods in India too, so it's a whole Telugu language thing. But yes, the idea that you never see Superman get tired.
Well, it's not even tired. It's take a breath. Like, they never
No breath.
breathe.
No.
They're only ever smiling and doing the most amazing crap you've ever seen in your life. The way this movie starts, I knew like from frame one not frame one. There's a little bit of a prologue, but the first like time we see one of our main characters and he faces off against thousands of people by
200
himself.
guys at once.
It's
Yeah.
one of the most incredible opening action sequences of any movie. And you have that thing where you're like, oh, is this kind of be a sort of a James Bond movie problem where the best action sequence is at the beginning? Nope.
Nope.
It's only the beginning.
It's followed up
Yeah.
by another one and followed up by the best meet cute, I think, ever. Because
Yes.
that their whole meeting is like, you go this way, I go this way. It's just like pointing from hundreds of feet apart. It's like, we're going to save that kid, bro.
Dude.
Yeah,
They
bro.
don't even talk. They just
Yeah,
bond,
they
and they
just
immediately
bond.
connect over their own just masculinity and trying to save this boy. And it's incredible. It's just
It's like they found their
soulmate.
soulmate, yeah, in the best possible way. It's like, and what their soul represents is expressed in that sequence. This movie is damn fun, wonderful on every level. The fact that we got RRR and Everything Everywhere All at Once in the same year is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah.
and
I
they
agree.
both
I
end
also
in a
thought
very
about that
similar
movie, too.
climax too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will just say a couple thoughts and then we can get to spoilers. But yeah, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think it's maximalist filmmaking. I love the earnestness of it. I love that it keeps one-upping itself. As you just mentioned, it has two of the most badass character introductions of all time.
Incredible.
And very different
from each other.
Very
Yeah.
different from each other, right? And
Yeah.
so, and you just it's built these guys up to be like some of the biggest badasses that you've ever seen in film, and it just keeps ramping itself up from there. And I had a great time with this movie. I loved it. It's probably gonna be one of my favorite movies of the year. At the same time, Devendra, I think it's also right to recognize that how a movie like this might be used as a propaganda tool, very much like Top Gun Maverick, a movie that we all loved, but it's like, it's probably going to be a great boon for military recruitment. And we should just be aware of that, be aware of like how it might be used and what its myth making is in popular culture. But
I also want to say, no, we should also see more movies where people are crushing imperialist necks. Please.
Yes,
like more
certainly.
of that. This
Certainly.
movie, I was trying to think of the other movie this reminded me of, and that was Bacurau, the Brazilian movie. And it's very much that idea of how oppressed people can fight back against
I also
powerful forces.
want to chime in about the just string, the whole genre of Chinese films that are very similar.
Mhm.
Like, for example, the whole Ip Man franchise, which
Yeah.
takes a historical figure and basically turns him into a superhero. And it's very much that same sort of nationalist propaganda, very
Yes.
almost jingoist to an extent. And each film basically has Ip Man, played by Donnie Yen, facing off against some sort of imperialist foe, usually American foe, often other times British, and beating him with his fists.
Yeah.
It's the Rocky Four premise, but turned around,
Yeah.
and that's what Ip Man does, and that's basically what RRR does, and I think that's incredible.
It's also just fascinating to see movies like or shows like Squid Game, which has a depiction of Americans, and movies like RRR, which has a depiction of British colonialists, and just kind of like understand how other countries see white people. Basically, seeing Ray Stevenson in this movie is incredible as like
He was
mustache
so good.
twirling bad
Yeah.
guy.
He's so evil.
Yeah.
Punisher himself. Yeah.
And also Alison Doody, who I think is she plays Ilsa in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, I believe, right? She's
Huh.
also in
Yeah,
this
yeah.
movie. Yeah.
Oh.
So anyway, everything, as with everything else in the movie, the depiction of the villains is over the top. But the movie commits to it. It amplifies so many moments, and like literally amplifies them by slowing them down, sometimes to seemingly like 1,000 frames a second, where it etches these images indelibly into your mind. And I think it's really a lot of fun. I'd highly recommend it. Let's talk about a couple of the specific scenes in spoilers, starting right now.
Now you're looking for the secret.
You're gonna see this coming.
No. But you won't find it because, of course,
You're not gonna see this coming.
you're not really looking.
I have been puzzling over how it works.
You don't really want to work it out.
Who's in the box? I have been dying to tell you.
I want to tell you my secret. You want to be fooled.
All right, we're in spoilers for RRR, and I'll just start by saying they did the Raccacoonie thing, guys, in real life.
That's
And
true.
I'll leave it
That's
vague
true.
as to what I'm even talking about if you haven't seen the movie that's referring
Yeah.
to. But
I mean, as I mentioned, because it is something I will have mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, but
wow, nice.
as I mentioned, the strongest strongest representation of bro love. How many bros will you just piggyback and go fight people with? Like that. It's beautiful.
It's the perfect representation of soulmates because they are so connected with each other and so intertwined that they can literally make up one body that is so badass.
Yeah. I got
Yeah.
legs,
Just
you
defeat
got
a whole
arms.
army.
Let's go.
You
I
can
believe-
skip leg day if you have a bro.
I believe it was the Spice Girls who said, "When to become one."
Yep. Same
my-
same context too for that.
Same
one.
context.
Yep.
My only criticism with this movie,
Mhm.
honestly,
Mhm.
is that it goes so far in the betrayal, like so graphically disturbing in how
Mhm.
You mean the torturing and
yes,
stuff? Yeah.
and to be able to come back from that at all felt
Yeah.
maybe not earned.
It's a very Infernal Affairs thing, except by the end, they're both technically good, except we didn't know what Ram's plan was. By the way, shout out to Ram Charan and NT Rama Rao Jr. Like these guys, among the biggest stars in India together. So it is worth checking out some of their other movies. I think.
I think
they're
the
just
flashback
incredible.
does a lot of heavy lifting
Yeah.
to get us on Rom's side because
Yes.
But after
little
he
snippets of it.
totally messes up a dude and then is like apologetic immediately.
It's like
yeah.
whip him. Oh man, that sucks that he had to whip his friend. But then it's like now use the barbed whip, and it just feels like whoa. Do we need to go this far? I mean, the sequence where he starts singing during that is very powerful, and it's all very powerful. But it's like, I mean, the only way back from that is like, oh, I totally didn't understand that you also hate the Imperialists.
Well, it's after that scene that Ram is like, maybe I went a little too far with this.
Yeah.
maybe this
I do
time I
wanna
went a little
say-
too far.
I want to
wanted
say that it's
guns.
amazing. I think there's like no other movie where I could describe a a whipping scene that is also a musical scene, just as moving and still works as much as it does. It sounds like a parody, but here it really works as like an emotional turning point for the movie.
Literally, the last time I saw a whipping scene that graphic was when I watched Passion of the Christ.
Passion of the Christ, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, imagine having a musical number during Passion of the Christ. You know, like it'd be outlandish.
Isn't there one?
No, I think you're thinking of Jesus Christ Superstar, Jeff.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a
I always
different
get those
thing.
confused.
It's a different
I always
thing.
get those.
Yeah.
But anyway, I also agreed with Jeff that this movie could easily be split into two movies. There is this I should have mentioned this in the pre-spoilers, but there's even this like fade to black where
Well, there's a
there is an
logo that
intermission.
comes up.
It's
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
intermission, basically.
There's an
Yeah.
intermission in the theater too. So
yeah,
but
and
not
then
really
it
in
comes
the
back
US
to the flashback.
theaters, technically. Yeah.
The only thing from a storytelling perspective, I think they could have moved the flashback to later.
Mhm.
I think typically in these kinds of movies, it's like a surprise when the person who you think is the bad person turns onto the good side, and then the flashback kind of gives the whole game away. You know, it like removes any
Yeah, you
any
could have
narrative
the
tension
turn
from that. Right? Yeah.
You could have the turn happen, and then you
And
flash
then you
back
do
to
the
show
flash.
why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then you do the flash. So that was the
Yeah.
only, like, narratively, I'm like, you could have moved that flashback like 10, 15 minutes later, maybe. But
But that,
other
that
than that,
amazing
no notes.
sequence, that amazing sequence with the raid, which is so gorgeously shot, the raid at night at the palace.
Oh my gosh,
Is incredible, but I'm looking at the runtime. I'm like, how are we here? This is clearly the climax of our movie.
This feels like the climax of the film. Yeah.
Yeah, this is clearly what we've been working up toward, is the saving of the girl. How are we here? And we still have an hour and a half of movie to go, and that's because there's a second movie. There's a whole second movie.
And I will say, we talked a little bit about this in the main review, but one thing I really appreciate about this movie is I do feel like it saves the best for last.
Yeah.
I think that a thing that a lot of movies have a problem with these days, a lot of action movies, is they have their best action scene in the first third or half of the film, and then like the movie never feels like it rises to that level. This movie continues to outdo itself. Now, I don't know if the last action scene is like the best, but it certainly has some of the most memorable visuals. Like, guy picking up motorcycle and bashing people's heads in with it. There's nothing else you're gonna see in the rest of the movie like that. And
it's Black Panther and Hawkeye team up to take down all the
they basically
Imperials.
both turn into gods.
Yes.
It's incredible.
Well, yeah.
Using rifles like John Woo pistols too.
Like John Woo pistols.
Yeah.
Ram basically turns into like Rama, the like mythical, Hindu figure too. So it's like it's all, and his wife is named Sita too. Like it's all, it's all like up there in terms of, if you know your mythology, it's there. I will say, I think Inglorious 70mm in the chat room is pointing out most Indian films do feel like two movies, and that is the thing. Like they're very long, and you get your money's worth. Basically, like they take you on a journey. None of this part 1, part 2 nonsense. Like it's both here.
Yeah.
I will say, of the Indian films I've seen, I've only seen maybe a handful of them across just like the scattered sleepovers or like classic movies that I've managed to watch on Criterion Channel or something. This one manages to tie its two movies together like better than other movies I've seen, where like sometimes you'll have like in other movies you'll have like a love interest who appears in the first half and then just like completely disappears in the second half. And you're like, where'd she go? But here it does feel like more connected, and the flashback does kind of act as the sort of connective tissue between those, to be like, oh, this is why he was acting this way, this is why Ram is doing this entire thing, and it suddenly became a colonial uprising film and that kind of thing. But so I didn't really mind the placement of the flashback as much. I think if you look at it less as a structure of an action film, but as the structure of a melodrama, it kind of works in that way too. And like a lot of Indian films are really, really drawing from that melodrama pool. Like this whole movie is as much a melodrama as it is an action epic, and that's why I think like the wholesomeness and like the sincerity of all of its motions work so well. So yeah, basically, I'm just saying I really like this movie.
It reminded me what I love so much about Sam Raimi movies too. Like Sam Raimi's been on my mind because we just saw Doctor Strange, and I've been revisiting some of his stuff too. And it's like those Spider-Man movies, guys, like just earnestness, right? Just pure like I'm going through this harsh thing as Peter Parker. Like I'm just a guy trying to live my life, and the entire world is against me. Like there is a level of earnestness that I feel like we don't see as much in movies today, especially like superhero movies, which they're trying to be quippy, they're trying to be darker or something, but not like this.
Well, we
There's a
live in the
notion-
age of the Joss Whedon superhero film,
Right.
and also the Zack Snyder superhero film, which is like almost anti that, and also the anti-hero. Like
Yeah.
these are a lot of what populates our movie screens these days. We don't have the old version of we talked about this many times in the podcast. We don't have the old version of Superman where he's just into truth, justice, and the American way.
They tried to bring him back and they laughed at him. So it's like, and even that was before we went super snark and everything.
Mhm.
And there's a notion that melodrama, which is typically associated with women's film genres, women's stories, is not masculine enough. It's too feminine. It's too weak. But I think movies like RRR show that you can be a super masculine melodrama. You can have that pool between duty and honor and family or love, and still be the most hype, most masculine, most testosterone-driven movie that you've ever seen.
The other movie that this kind of reminds me of in a weird way is Point Break.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because of
two
the two
dudes
guys
falling in love with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Through the extreme.
Totally. Let me ask you guys this: do any of you have favorite sequence from the movie? I know it's very hard to choose.
There's so many.
Yeah,
there's so many, but actually the actual there is an actual rom-com squished into this movie, and that is the whole Beam trying to hang out with the British girl, like the one white person in this movie who's not a monster. Apparently, he's like he's totally for her, and it's very cute seeing them try to communicate without being able to speak each other's language.
He literally crafts a bracelet in real time for her.
It's beautiful.
Which another thing that I felt like maybe there was a cut where that was seeded in some way, that was bracelet was a thing. Maybe just culturally, I didn't know that bracelet was because the girl reacts to it with such. The little girl, when she gets it, reacts to it with such like, I know this is something, but I was like, well, if we had seeded that earlier in the movie in some way to know that he was like crafting something knowing that she would get a message, but movie just goes, she gets it.
She gets it. You get it. Come on, keep up, audience.
I have to say, I think that the opening scene when Rom is introduced, I do think that just it's just really incredible, because
you've never seen anything like it.
You've never seen, well, I think the last time I saw something like it was Game of Thrones Battle of the Bastards.
Right.
I think, or it was either that or Hard Home. I don't remember, but basically like one of these massive battle episodes. I think it was Battle of the Bastards, where like there's just this crush of humans like packed together in a configuration you haven't seen before. And the idea of like, they're sending this guy to go arrest this person. And you're just like, well, that's impossible. There's no way they're ever going to actually plausibly depict this. And I don't know that they plausibly depict it, but it is incredible how they're like, we're going to do as good of a job as we can to convince you that this is actually physically possible.
This movie asks you to accept superpowers like from the beginning. It's like, okay, you're either with it or you're not.
And then to show him,
go ahead. I don't even think it's superpowers. It's just his force of will.
Yes.
He just decides he will not be stopped, and therefore is not.
It's not even that physics defying, because you feel the bone crunching, the blood, and like he gets hit on the head with a rock at one point, and he still powers through. It's that resilience, that force of will that he's just like, I'm gonna do it. I'm just like, my force of will is so powerful. I can just defeat a whole army of people, and it's incredible.
Yeah, and what's great about that scene too is it's actually a sequence of interesting mini battles, right? And what I mean by that is, it's not just like, oh, he's like beating everyone over, the head with a stick like 500 times. It's like he encounters like a series of mini challenges along the way, and they're all like kind of shot differently, and the things that he does to get out of them are different. It's just so creative, how it's not just like, oh, we're just going to show him like forcing his way through the crowd one by one. It's like they actually want to make it interesting, and so not only is it an amazing character introduction that like sets up, hey, this is one of the biggest badasses of all time, but then it's interesting from a filmmaking perspective, and then of course they throw in the social commentary too of everyone that he got passed over for the promotion. which
I like how you
really
don't
brutal.
promote that guy.
Yes, yes,
Like, I
exactly.
understood
Which is just
that.
like, wow, it really does make these British colonialists into like complete monsters, which is
You just need to try a little harder, you know?
Yeah.
The world's
Well,
not fair.
I mean, I think the thing that turns them into monsters even before that is the speech we get back to over and over about the price of a bullet.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, such good writing. It's like, dude, this life is not even worth wasting a bullet on. And then that first woman that gets clocked in the face with it's just brutal.
Yeah,
brutal.
The
Yeah,
mother. I thought they killed her at the beginning,
thought
but
they
she
killed her
shows
and
up.
then
She
she
shows
shows
up at the end. Yeah, I was like, okay, that could have been clearer, movie, before you cut the credits. Actually, let us know if the girl gets back to her mother. That'd be nice. There's a lot of cool stuff in the background too. I love in the big like British assembly room. There's just a giant world map and be like, we own this shit over there, Africa, South America. That's where my family's from, by the way. All over the place. We own it. It's ours. And yeah, beautiful stuff.
yeah. HT, any favorite sequence in the movie for you?
I mean, for me, I kind of go back to the more wholesome moments. I just love their first meeting, the best, the most incredible action-packed meet cute, where a train I think explodes or derails, and a child who is fishing and trying to get a fish for Beam is caught underneath it, and there's fire all around him, and Rom is on the bridge, and they basically just signal to each other, and they have an understanding with their eyes and their fists of how to save him. And
I mean, when that train blows up in the water and that kid like flips over, like that kid's raft flips over and he hits the water and it's in like ultra slow motion, I'm like, wow, it looked like a kid got hurt filming this thing. Like it's incredible how it's shot. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, it's shot with such in just high intensity, heightened everything. And yeah, when they do their dive off the bridge and cover themselves with the wet flag, couldn't get out more on the nose about the nationalist part about this movie. And then their hands meet, and then of course it goes immediately to the rom-com montage. Just like that whole like 15-20 minutes, I think, is just like one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Well, it's so funny because I didn't know anything about this movie before going into it, and so when he like waves at him from the top of
we should have live streamed your reaction to this movie, Jeff, because you had no idea.
Yeah,
no
totally
idea.
Good, totally good.
No idea. He waves to him from the top of the bridge, you know, and you go, oh, good. And then they start like working together. I'm like, oh, this is what a cool, interesting way for the good guy and the bad guy to not realize that they found each other, that they, you know, and then I did not. And you get to the end of that sequence, like, oh man, they had to team up to save this kid, and now the shit's really gonna hit the fan. It's like, no, the exact opposite. They fall in love with each other.
It's a Step Brothers thing. Are we best friends now? Yeah.
Actually, that was what I literally what I thought was when Rom goes to the railing of the bridge and he looks out and sees Beam there. I thought he's like, oh, he recognizes that's the dude, right?
That's
like,
what I thought too. I thought, oh my god, oh maybe he's gonna have to use him to do something, or he's got him pegged, but there's this other thing. But like the movie just goes, nope.
He recognizes power. Power sees power.
Yeah,
that's
power.
it.
Yeah,
They climb a pyramid a human pyramid together.
It's game recognized game. Is what that is.
Exactly.
Totally.
And they save the kid together. The lovely scene where Rom punctures the lady's tires, and it's just this comedy scene of like him trying to help the guy get a date. Beautiful stuff. Like it is.
So
That's just pure comedy. It comes out of nowhere. Like it is so far removed from the balls to the wall action we've been seeing. That is what I kind of loved about this movie too. Like it has room for everything.
It can do it all. It can do it all.
Yeah,
right?
It can do it all.
The sequence where the guy at the big event maliciously trips Beam, and the platter falls to the ground, but then keeps rolling, and other stuff happens, but we keep going back and looking at the platter rolling, but then other stuff happens, and then we go back to the platter rolling, and then Rom goes over, picks up the platter, turns it into a drum, to like be a wingman for his bro.
Yeah,
it's like
that was a badass moment when he starts
Can we
drumming.
talk about during that sequence too, the one black drummer in the band who was just like shaking his head because he's like solidarity with other minorities.
The guy was like,
stuff.
"Can you dance jazz or swing or something?" And the guy's like, Yeah, can you dance swing? But I also love how he totally knows what's going on. It's like, oh, we're having a dance fight? Okay, I'm gonna drum to the dance fight.
Oh, dude, that sequence is so rad, and it lasts so long, and you just feel like, how many days did it take to shoot this? Because they are dancing with such violence and energy, and like it must have been exhausting. This thing, and they're just like going and going and going. It's like,
Yeah,
ugh.
Tom Cruise could never. You know, he's done many things, but I don't know if he could do this.
Tom Cruise do an Indian film challenge.
Well, he did. Was it Tropic Thunder? We have Tom Cruise dancing. You know,
true.
but it's not the same.
I also loved. Didn't he also dance in the P.T. Anderson movie? What was that Paul Thomas Anderson movie?
Yeah,
Risky Business, I think, is what you're thinking of.
Yeah. I also love the Beam intro. You know, where he's baiting
amazing.
he thinks he's taking on a wolf, and then he's all of a sudden he's taking on a tiger. My favorite part of that sequence is the he gets the tiger in the trap, but the trap isn't it's too strong. He has to use his incredible strength to just pull those two ropes together, and all he has to do is hook it. But no, that's not even what that goes wrong. Like the movie keeps going, oh, he's only going to do one thing, but no, he upped the ante again, and it's so great of doing that over and over, of building up the thing and then one-upping the build-up even.
I do love that we don't even know what that's for until like 2 hours into the movie. Like, oh, this is a whole bunch of animals. You're storing them up. It's great.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Check out
And that
Tiger.
sequence is amazing when all the animals assault the thing, because I love how the movie isn't like, no, these animals aren't trained for our heroes. They're just attacking anything. And so our heroes even have to fight off the animals or redirect the animals' rage to the right direct. You know, it's so good. It's so good.
Another piece of vengeance against the imperialists, because they were hunting all the animals for their pleasure, and now you can see them wreak revenge against them.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Good stuff. All right, folks. Any other thoughts on RRR, or shall we end it there?
I mean, I feel like we're going to be coming back to this movie quite a bit. So this is our gushing session, and maybe we'll have room for like other deep dive sessions.
I mean, that's
at
the
some point,
problem
but
is I want to keep just like, man, remember that part?
That time.
Remember that part?
Oh, yeah. I'll give a shout out to this. I thought the flashback sequence was pretty well done. You know, with him and his father, and the idea.
Aim, load.
Yeah.
Fire.
That's great.
Yeah. And the idea of like them like fighting off these guys and try to make it plausible that one person could fight off like 500 dudes. You know, I thought that was it felt very there was also, I got some 300 vibes too. There was the sequence when Ram is introduced, I think, where he like pushes all these people off of a rock. And it reminded me a lot of Zack Snyder and, of course, the original 300 comic of like pushing all these people off this rock. And
it's better because he rolls down with and using their body to brace him on the way down.
Yeah, totally. So, anyway,
I like that there's 2 heists in this movie too. Just of the many things that are happening here, like they hold not just one heist but 2 heists, like the whole siege with the animals, but then also when Beam comes back to rescue Ram, and he's like knocking on the floor, on the ground, and trying to hear him. I'm like, wow, there's like 2 heists in here.
Oh, lots of little things. There's several foot chases that are just so energetic and so fast too. Like I almost wonder, sure, the CG would have been tough to do like 10 years ago, but I think the level of filmmaking here, there's probably a lot of like smaller digital cameras from what I can tell. Like those running sequences alone seemed really tough to shoot because they're moving hella fast.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that whole sequence where Beam gets away from being out there to be crucified in the middle of the desert or whatever that is, and Ram is just like taking down dozens of dudes at a time
and then he rolls onto a tree stump and like it stabs him in the back.
Yeah. Just to give him like an extra few seconds to run away, and he's just like holding like 8 guys down by himself.
But then when Beam like doesn't understand what he's doing and like hits him in the face,
he
it's
thinks
like,
he's trying to shoot the girl.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So brutal. Amazing. Well, anyway, at the end of the day, it's pretty impressive that SS Rajamouli made this movie, I have to say. And
Yeah,
I think
perhaps
that-
the greatest movie ever made.
Give me some behind the scenes, man. I want some BTS on this bad boy. I feel like this was just this Herculean undertaking to make
This would
movie.
be that would actually. I don't want to see like the series version of this movie. I want to see like a series long behind the scenes, like making a featurette, like 12.
There needs to be a
episodes of that.
Matrix Revisited-esque, documentary about RRR. But
There's a bunch of shots in this movie where it feels like, oh my god, those TikTok videos where the person like takes a pen and throws it across the room and it lands right in the pen container, and the only way they did it is just brute forcing it.
Yes,
it feels like there's a lot of that in this movie where there are things that didn't feel CG to me that felt like they just brute forced the fact that everything just worked out just so, and they just did it over and over and over until it did.
Yeah. Wow, Jeff, never thought I'd get a TikTok reference from you on the podcast.
Nice. I dabble.
Yeah,
It's a good place to put
dabble
some
with what the
limericks,
kids
yeah.
are up to these days.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, that's going to bring us to the end of our review of RRR. Super fun movie. Check it out on Netflix right now. And before I wrap up and talk about what we'll be discussing next week, I should mention that you can find more episodes of this podcast at thefilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Our theme song comes courtesy of Tim McEwen over at The Midnight. Check out his new project, Varsity Blue. Our spoiler bumper comes from filmmaker and YouTuber Kyle Corwith. Our weekly plugs bumper comes from Noah Ross. This episode was edited by me, David Chen. Before I wrap up, I do just want to say, Hoai-Tran Bui, thanks so much for joining us today. Anything you want to plug while you're on this podcast?
Well, you can always find me at slashfilm.com. I'm on Twitter at HTranBui. And I also host my own Star Trek Doctor Who watch podcast, Trekking Through Time and Space, available on all podcasting platforms. So that's where you can find me.
All right.
And
Thanks.
thank you again for having me.
Yes, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. Okay, next week on the podcast. Well, first of all, for the After Dark this week, we are going to be discussing Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, the 5th Jurassic Park movie. And next week, of course, it's going to be Jurassic World Dominion, which, as every day progresses, seems less and less likely like it's going to be number one at the box office this summer.
Yeah, and my anticipation for seeing that thing not getting any higher, especially after a movie like RRR. Yeah,
Not only RRR, but like the buzz is quite bad on this movie. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they messed up such a slam dunk concept as dinosaurs on Earth in society. But we will talk about both the 5th film and also on the After Dark at patreon.com/filmpodcast, and the 6th film next week right here on the Filmcast. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you later. Okay, woo! Nicely done.
Right.
Yay!
All right.
Thanks again for having me, guys.
Thanks, HT.
Yay,
Really
thanks for being
appreciate it.
here.
Yeah.
All right, we're still broadcasting live, but yeah, HT, this will publish tomorrow, and thanks for joining us.
Thank
All right,
you.
Great.
Have a
I'll
good
see you
night.
guys later.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Do you guys need a break, or should we just press on right through?
I'm
Press
good.
on.
Let's go.
Okay. All right.
Hello.
Are we ready?
I am ready.
Kanata's not here yet.
There we
Excuse me.
go. Take that, listeners. On YouTube.
Yeah.
We are very professional here.
Jeff, you there?
Yes.
Everyone have your opening statements?
Yep.
Let's just do this thing then, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Hold on for 1 second. Okay. In 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Filmcast, a podcast about movies. I'm David Chen, and wow, I haven't seen a motorcycle scene that cool since Jet Li's The One. No, Jet Li's The One. Okay, anyway.
Okay.
Joining-
Okay. I thought you were going to go for Mission Impossible 2, but okay. Or
Join-
Torque.
Joining me today is Devindra Hardawar
I also believe piggyback rides are the truest form of bro love.
and Jeff Kanata.
This podcast is like a friendship between a wild storm and an erupting volcano.
But how will it end?
But how will it end?
Those are, of course, all very vague and oblique references to the fact that today on the podcast, we're going to be reviewing RRR, the international sensation directed and written by S.S. Rajamouli. It's streaming right now in its Hindi form on Netflix. You can find more episodes of this podcast at thefilmcast.com. Email us at /filmcast@gmail.com. Support this show at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks. This week on the After Dark, we're going to be discussing Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom to prepare for the arrival of Jurassic World Dominion. Last week we covered Jurassic Park 1. This week we're covering Jurassic Park 5, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Next week it's going to be Jurassic World Park 6, Jurassic World 3, whatever. It's confusing. Jurassic World Dominion. It's going to be the next week review. Anyway, so sign up for those episodes, those exclusive After Darks at patreon.com/filmpodcast. I recently put the Tom Cruise After Dark on the main feed. Got a lot of feedback for that one, didn't we? Huh? A lot of feedback for that.
It's folks responded. It seems
people had really strong opinions about whether or not Tom Cruise is still a sex symbol.
We just need to have an inflammatory opinion on every episode or podcast, and that's how you keep the engagement up.
Well, okay, all you guys got to do is just be wrong as vehemently as you were. And
wow.
No, you want a thing where it's perfectly divided, because I think that is kind of where we are, and both sides are both arguing for it. And I think we figured out how Fox News kind of does business.
Oh, yes, totally.
Get people angry.
Here's my position after reading the incredible amount
voluminous.
Yes, the opinions on either side. I think it's kind of hard. I think you guys would have to acknowledge that if there is any percentage of folks that think he is, then he is, right? Just because you
I don't
personally
believe in
don't.
absolutism, Jeff. Sorry.
Well, but by virtue of the fact that any percent, even if it was like 10%, 20%, like to those people he is, and just because it isn't to you, it's not a subjective decision. It's like
I'm talking about majorities here.
Yeah,
like,
majority of
broadly,
people. Majority, broadly, exactly.
Yeah. People are
in
just
the
sick
main.
shit, Jeff.
Well,
in
like,
the main,
I'm not gonna give.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna give 10% anything.
It does feel like it's close to 50-50.
Yeah,
And in that sense, I just feel like you have to acknowledge that there's a large portion of people that still do, and clearly the movie still does. So
here's what I will acknowledge, Jeff, is the vehemence with which people think they are right is extremely strong. It's not, there's no one that's like, oh guys, I think maybe you want to reconsider. It's more like, wow, Dave and Devendra are like so freaking wrong. It's like, it's very, very strong.
Or Jeff is a crazy person.
Yes.
Well, it's also, it is, I've noticed a lot of people just aren't listening to the full argument too. So it's like, it is kind of like the Avatar thing, where we will say our points, and then it'll get misconstrued through the game of telephone to where, people come up with their own minds on certain things. But hey, it's a fun chat.
It turns out that Tom Cruise is Schrodinger's sexiness.
Indeed. Well,
he's both sexy and not sexy at the same time.
Well, do you know who's probably finding Tom Cruise extremely sexy? Paramount.
Yeah.
Because Top Gun Maverick has at this moment, as we're recording this, has an extremely solid chance at being the #1 film at the domestic box office this summer.
We're ruined.
It's unbelievable. It's truly. I mean, people are like, apologize to Jermaine, which yes, he clearly we owe him an apology for how
Jermaine did not guess #1.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. That's the point I was about to get to. It's like even Jermaine was like, no, there's no human that thought this was going to happen.
I mean, and this trajectory, I think Jermaine put Doctor Strange above Top Gun Maverick, right? At this trajectory, you can follow along at thesummermoviewager.com, but at this trajectory, it is very likely going to beat Doctor Strange at minimum. It currently has $295 million domestic. It dropped, I think, around 20 to 30% in its second weekend, which is like the lowest drop for any movie in history that made over $100 million in its first weekend.
It's crazy.
It is the most amount of movie in its second weekend that any movie under 100 that any movie that made under $175 million in its opening weekend made, right? So it's like basically like it made a lot of money in its opening weekend and a lot of money in its second weekend. That's, in short, I'm summarizing what I just said, right? Like people are coming out, and I'll say, me personally, I've seen the film 3 times already.
Yeah, you're part of the problem, Dave. You're making us look bad.
I want to get in those IMAX showings before Jurassic World Dominion takes over. You know,
it's extraordinary. I think, you know, we listeners to the show are allowed to play along at the summermoviewager.com. We had hundreds, if not thousands, of people submitting their own top tens. I would venture to guess, I don't have proof of this, but I would venture to guess 0 people put that movie number 1. 0 of those hundreds or thousands. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is, and we'll talk about this more when we do our like wager postmortem episode, but like you have to remember when this movie was supposed to come out 2 to 3 years ago, we had seen tons of Lego sequels, many of which didn't do that well. You know, there was like, I'll give an example. Blade Runner 2049, okay? Independence Day Resurgence, right? Those are both kind of like reboots, similar in tone and bringing back the original cast. And those movies both tanked, right? And that's just 2 examples, right? So there have been many examples of movies that tried to do something like what Top Gun Maverick did and failed horribly. And so
there's just no barometer for it. There's no, like, even Tom Cruise movies, you can't judge by any of the Mission Impossibles lately. There's no barometer that would have predicted this.
Tom Cruise's movies, like Mission Impossible movies, were the best performing ones of Tom Cruise movies in general. And even those movies came nowhere close to this, right? Like, forget about the rest of his filmography. Like, putting aside Mission Impossible movies, you know, he was doing way worse than that. And this movie completely blows the Mission Impossible movies out of the water. What is encouraging about this, though, is this probably means Mission Impossible 7 is going to make a shit ton of money, which I'm very happy about. Because
I'm certainly they feel a lot better about spending a shit ton of money for it, which is what they have done. The other thing that's wild is this could so easily have been a straight to streaming movie.
Oh my God, yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, that's wild to think about it. This movie
his sheer willpower stopped that. Yeah.
It was like getting stale on a shelf for years,
costing the studio millions of dollars by sitting on the shelf. Yeah,
and it could so easily have we would never have known how many people were super into this movie. We would just been like, wow, it's number 1 on Netflix or something. You know, it's like, it's crazy,
and it just shows you like how theatrical releases can make something into. It's easy to forget after the last couple of years, but theatrical releases can make things into a cultural phenomenon. Kim Kardashian has seen this movie 3 times, guys. Kim Kardashian. How
do you know this?
Because she
text
Instagrams.
each other.
Yeah. I you know, she Instagram storied about it, and you know, I'm a big fan of the Kardashian Insta story. So, there was a Hollywood Reporter article called "The Real Mission Impossible: Saying No to Tom Cruise," written by Kim Masters.
Well, now it really is going to be impossible to say no.
Oh well, so this whole thing was about how, you know, Paramount has like a 6-week thing where a movie will be in theaters for 6 weeks and then it goes on Paramount Plus, right? And Tom Cruise is like, F no, I'm not allowing that for my movies, right? And he thinks it should be a 3-month window, and everyone's like, no, Tom Cruise, like, you have to understand, like, a movie makes most of its money in the first 45 days, blah 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 blah, you know. And he's like, nope, not going to hear it. And the article ended with this quote. So they've basically been arguing over the massive budget of Mission Impossible 7, which I think at this point is like $290 million or something ridiculous like that. The release schedule for Mission Impossible 7 and 8. And so there's been a lot of like studio turmoil over these movies, how they're getting made, what their budgets are, when they're going to release, how they're going to be released. And I will never forget this quote that this article ended with. It said, quote, "A veteran of Tom Cruise movies laughs when asks how the head of the studio is likely to fare in his arguments with Tom Cruise. This is the way these things go," he says. "Tom says what he wants, and the studio says what it wants, and then Tom gets what he asked for." End quote.
Now more than ever.
And that was before Top Gun Maverick came out.
Yeah.
When
Can you imagine the meeting now when he just walks in the room? He's like, yeah.
I own the studio now. This is yeah.
I mean, the runaway success of this movie opens up a ton of other possibilities just in the Hollywood world. Like, maybe there's going to be some Oscar love for this movie, you know, like maybe some kind of recognition that this movie helped to save theaters.
The Oscar for saving cinema.
Yeah. I will say that the statistic that did trouble me is this past weekend, theatrical receipts were down 20% roughly compared to the same weekend in 2019, so before COVID even happened.
Well,
and that is
yeah, but
because
we're
there's
not
just not that
done
many
with
movies
COVID.
coming out, right?
Yeah.
There's not that many movies coming out. People aren't going to see movies because there's not that many of them. The studios are very much in a one movie at a time mentality right now. You know,
Yeah.
like when the Batman came out, it's like no movies before and after the Batman. You know, when this
I
movie
also
comes
think
out, yeah.
that explains why the low dip for Maverick. People are just, well, let's just go back and see that again.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. But it's a movie that I think rewards repeat viewings. You know, like it's a fun movie to rewatch again.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Can I present one other idea that I don't necessarily even think is true, but I think it'd be fun to bring it up.
sure, okay, of course.
I've been trying to, analyze this whole situation and explain to myself why this movie right now, I think there's probably some pent up desire to see something that's aspirational and positive and fun, and it is the sort of nostalgia rub that is almost like nostalgia for pre-COVID also. I think there's a lot of that weird sort of nebulous zeitgeist happening.
I think it's a movie that it has extremely broad appeal. It's bringing out Gen Xers to the theaters, and it's kind of the plot is simple enough, like people going to do a courageous mission, right? That's the plot. And it's simple enough that it can basically attract people from all across the age spectrum.
Yeah. But then that brings me to the premise that I want to present to you.
Please.
I don't necessarily even think is true, but I think would be kind of amazing if it happened. What if this movie sort of single-handedly ushers in a renaissance of the sort of anti-visual effects, or not even anti-visual effects, but sort of authenticity in cinema? What if the takeaway here is the thing that Tom Cruise has been spouting a lot in a lot of the making of and behind the scenes and sort of marketing around it, which is that, like, there's actual people in these jets and the audiences can feel the difference when it's a real thing. And there's this backlash to, the Marvel / any blockbuster sort of CGification of it. Not that I'm against CG in any way, but wouldn't it be wild to see a bunch of movies, a sort of like shift in what big budget Hollywood movies are to this different kind of filmmaking? And you just, like, I don't think that's going to happen, but I'm presented as a what if.
It's not even different. It's just what they used to do.
Yeah.
It's like how we used to make movies, except now we could put cameras in more places. And I don't know, because we are also at the same time revolutionizing ways of virtualizing entire sets and, putting people, putting actors in scenes who aren't anywhere together, like shooting scenes completely remotely and things like that. Like, I would love for that to be the big takeaway, but I feel like studios are just like, well, look at Tom Cruise and Top Gun is back. Let's like a sequel, more things. This one worked. Let's do all of them.
Right. So here are my thoughts on that, Jeff. Number one, I would love if that happened. I don't think it will. I would love if it happened, though. I think the circumstances under which a movie like Maverick gets made are basically irreplicable, or not irreplicable, hard to replicate. And I can sum the entire thing up in the interaction that Tom Cruise and Ed Harris have at the opening of that film, which Ed Harris plays a character named Kane, and he basically says, in the future, planes will be unmanned. They won't, the pilots won't need to take a piss. They won't disobey orders. Your kind is headed for extinction. And Maverick, Tom Cruise's character, says, that may be so, sir, but not today. Yeah. And that sums up the entire ethos of the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, we basically just got one more day of this movie. But
right.
They're definitely dying.
Jeff, like we've been having this conversation too about like big screen, right? What is going to get people back to the theaters? And I think, if anything, the gears are turning to be like, okay, we need event movies, right? We need big things again. If it's special effects, if it's big stars, if it's doing IMAX in ways we've never seen before, like I do hope that there is more of that, because that is what will get people there.
I agree. Again, I hope that the future that you described comes to pass. But to me, it doesn't feel like a swan song, because we're still going to get, for instance, Mission Impossible 7 and 8.
Yeah,
but,
as long as Tom Cruise is still going, we're
right.
going,
Exactly. But the thing is, like, there's not that many Tom Cruises left that can even demand a movie like this get made. Do you know what I mean?
I just think it would be a cool lesson to take away from this.
Yes.
That like young star, let's find the young Jackie Chan, the young, you know, like the young like person who does their own stuff. I think that would be a cool thread to come from this. I don't think it's going to happen. The other thing that supports your point is I just saw the there's like a sort of half behind the scenes, half promotional video that's floating around where there is an interview with Jerry Bruckheimer, who very much looks like a wax statue come to life,
Brutal.
saying no movie has ever been made like this, and likely no one ever will again.
Yeah,
you know, it really does feel like this kind of unique thing, as you said, Dave.
Well,
Almost
I mean,
like-
I just saw something in the chat room too, by the way. Seated Ovation in the chat room points out Fury Road, you know, was a mostly practical, insane production, and that same thing, right? No movie was ever made like this. That movie, by the way, did not usher a whole, you know, flood of actual
I
physical
wouldn't.
stuff.
Fury Road used tons of practical effects, but it also used tons of visual effects. So I
mean,
I just wanna be careful.
everything uses visual effects. I'm not saying no visual effects.
Yep.
Tom Maverick did too. Yeah,
Get
Top Gun Maverick
the
did, for
cars,
sure.
get actual cars.
Right,
get
right.
actual
Exactly.
explosions,
I just
things
want
like
to clarify. I don't think you're saying this, Devinder, but there is a huge sentiment out there that people like Todd Vaziri is doing a good job of like fighting against, which is like there's a lot of people who are like not very educated and they say things like, "Oh, all CG is terrible," you know, all CG is, and it's like no, there's tons of CG in a lot of movies, including Maverick. You know, and it's just used more artfully in movies like Maverick and Fury Road, and so bad CG is bad. You know, I
there's
agree.
CG in literally everything.
Yes.
There's CG in literally everything you watch.
Yes.
The most banal TV show. You know, Downton Abbey has CG. It's like it's not
exactly.
You're not. People think CG is you know the Incredible Hulk or some big monster fight at the end of a movie.
Exactly.
Yes, but that's not the end of CG, and it's a tool in any filmmaker's
100%.
Where do you think those backgrounds come from? I've watched like unfinished Ted Lasso screeners, and it's just like they're just standing in an empty stadium, guys.
Yeah.
There's nothing behind people in most of these shows.
Yeah. So I just don't want CG to get a bad rap. That's all I'm saying. So, but
no, that's why I was laboring to present it in that way.
Yeah. Exactly. So, but I agree. The thing is, Tom Cruise is right. When you have an actual human doing an actual thing, the audience can tell, right? And I think the audience can tell when they watch Maverick that it's an actual people doing actual things. And not just on a soundstage, and
not a digital stunt person.
The eye can still tell, and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's kind of a swan song, and you know, it's kind of a bummer. But you know, not today. We still get movies like this. It's also weird to me that the Overton window has moved so much on movies that like a movie like Top Gun, which in a previous era would be conceived of as a soulless cash grab, is now like, wow, that's fresh, you know? Wow,
so
what a refreshing change of pace from people in tights and suits like hitting each other, you know?
I saw people talking about this. This is where I saw people making fun of the idea of Oscar prospects. It's like, guys, this is a fun movie. Let's calm down here. It's like we've never seen a movie before. It's like you got to give this movie an Oscar.
At the same time, you know, Mad Max Fury Road is nominated for I think 10 Oscars. You know, so
and deservedly so.
There are other categories. I'm just talking like Best Picture. I don't know about.
I don't know, man. Could happen. Could happen. Could happen.
The Academy likes money. It is very ironic that it's like, oh, thankfully we got something that's more back to the authentic nature of cinema, like a sequel to a 35-year-old movie.
Yes.
Back to the old days. Yeah.
Which itself was based on a poster, I think. Anyway, I wanted to read this email from Tyler, who is a features editor for Popular Mechanics magazine. Now, in Top Gun Maverick, very minor spoiler, but the enemy has these things called fifth generation fighters. And I believe on the podcast, we remarked, wow, that sounds fake. Now, the enemy is never referred to by name in the movie, right? And they refer to their aircraft as just fifth generation fighters. So it's like, oh, wow, they're a faceless, nameless enemy, and they have fifth generation fighters, which also sounds like it's completely made up. We got a ton of people emailing in and tweeting at us to correct us and saying, hey, fifth generation fighters is actually a real thing. So Tyler writes in, he says, that as a features editor at Popular Mechanics magazine, our brand has a special focus on military technology, and I often oversee reporting about the latest planes, land vehicles, and munitions. I understood your confusion over Top Gun Maverick's fifth-generation fighters and unnamed enemy country, but my work here at Popular Mechanics actually gave me some extra context for those scenes. It sounds hand-wavy in the movie, but fifth-generation fighters are common in military speak. Generally, these are jets made with 21st-century stealth, radar, and avionic technology. Right now, there are 3 aircraft in the world considered fifth-gen that specialize in air-to-air combat. America's F-22, China's J-20, and Russia's Su-57. Most aviation geeks believe the fifth-gen plane seen in Top Gun Maverick is a Russian Su-57. The biggest clue as to the plane's identity is a maneuver that it makes that I'm actually not going to give away. I'm going to skip over this paragraph, but there's a maneuver that it does, and you'll know it when you see it in the movie. But apparently, the real-life plane can actually do the thing that it does in the film. For context, the American fighters in Top Gun Maverick are 4th-gen aircraft, and then he goes into some other stuff that I'm not going to spoil as well. But anyway,
we need that 5G is what we need. We need that 5G,
right.
guys.
But he's saying in all cases, an Su-57 has a slight technological advantage, mostly in areas of stealth and maneuverability. I hope this adds to your appreciation of Tom Cruise's heroics in the movie. And if you're concerned about Russia's air capabilities, note that there are no Su-57s in active service, just 12 prototypes in reported existence, and none have seen combat. In the meantime, the Air Force is currently testing a 6th-generation fighter that is scheduled for service by 2030, end quote. So the 5th-generation fighter, actually a real thing. I will say that it sounds fake. Yes, it's a real thing, but it sounds fake in the movie. And
it's like unobtainium. It's like, you can't tell me that's real.
Right. I mean, I think based on the way the movie handles the quote-unquote enemy, it is very reasonable to conclude 5th-generation fighter things are fake. But they're not, and a lot of people wrote in saying they're not, and so thank you for the explanation. But also, because of the movie being hand-wavy in its politics, we thought it was hand-wavy in its technology, and I think that was a reasonable conclusion, but they're not. They're a real thing. So anyway, thank you for all the people that sent that in. I wanted to clarify. Also, saw the movie a 3rd time again, I mentioned this week, and my wife pointed out something that I thought was really interesting, which is that in the movie Top Gun Maverick, Maverick uses progressively older and older aircraft as the movie goes on. Which, if you think of I'm not going to give away all the ones, but if you think of every single aircraft he's in that movie, the next one is older than the previous one. So I just thought that was really interesting, because it's kind of a statement on what he's saying about his style of filmmaking and his stardom and
backward.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay.
Are any of the ones cold? Because a strong bad would say, I hope all your ones are cold. Cold. Yeah.
What?
Wow.
Forget it.
I just flash forward like 20 years or flash back. Like, amazing.
All right, let's get to what we've been watching.
Kid Strong Bad was a web cartoon for a Homestar Runner.
Web cartoons were made with a technology called Flash.
Yeah, before we could do
Kid
video on TV.
Yeah. Let's talk about what we've been watching, folks. Got a few what we've been watching things to go through. I had a chance to see David Cronenberg's Crimes of the Future. We actually debated whether to review Crimes of the Future today instead of RRR. I think we made the right choice. Because
didn't make the cut.
Didn't make the cut. Okay, I mean, I am super glad that Crimes of the Future. I get it. Nicely done. So Jeff, I'm gonna give away, and listeners, I'm gonna give away the premise of Crimes of the Future. So if you don't want to hear the premise, tune out for the next minute or two. But yeah, we almost reviewed Crimes of the Future today. It's playing in limited release right now. I'm really glad this movie is getting a theatrical release, but I think the target audience of this movie is about 36 people. It is a movie
and
that
all of them are on watch lists.
Wow. It takes place in the future. It takes place in a future in which human anatomy and physiology is completely different. People no longer experience pain, and some people spontaneously grow organs, which other, in a present day world would be perceived to be like a cancerous growth. But Viggo Mortensen knows how to grow organs better than anyone else. And he and his performance art partner, they do a performance art act where they cut the organs out of his body live and allow people to watch.
Sounds fun.
And he gets kind of entangled in a sort of web of intrigue as a result of his doings, and I'll just leave it at that. So This movie delivered on what I was looking for from a David Cronenberg movie. I mean, it's really weird and messed up, and it makes you think about the body and about how we conceptualize what the body is in different ways. And I really liked it. It's very low budget, and it feels very low budget. You know, because it takes place in the future, but you see very few people. You see very few like cityscapes or anything like that. But you know, Viggo's awesome. Leah Seydoux is awesome. Kristen Stewart is in this movie. She's amazing as well. I actually liked what she's doing better in this movie than what she did in Spencer. I thought she's amazing in this movie. But yeah, it's also extremely upsetting. It's extremely upsetting, some of this imagery. Okay, and if you want that, which I frequently do, you're gonna like Crimes of the Future. And if you don't, you're not going to. But
yeah, my brother took his girlfriend to see this movie, and
what was their reaction?
She was not a fan, but I also would have warned him about what they were getting into. Still, I'm intrigued. I cannot wait to see it.
I liked it, but it's also not a movie I'd necessarily recommend to anyone. Like,
I also have like a lot of earlier Cronenberg that I haven't seen yet too, and I hear like this feels like lesser Cronenberg. I don't know if you've seen enough of his early stuff to judge, Dave.
Yeah, I would say I don't know about lesser. It definitely still has the Cronenbergian essence. You know, it's like deeply unsettling, and it has all these like it's brimming with these ideas. But I was reflecting on this movie after I watched it, and one thing I said was the plot is my least favorite thing about this movie. You know, what I mean by that is the plot feels very disposable and not that interesting. And what is good about this movie is the ideas and the performances and the visuals. Like, that's what's good about it. And the vibe, you know, it's very much a vibe movie, I think.
Wonder if he saw Possessor, his son's movie, and was like, I should be doing this. What am I doing right
I liked
now? It's been
Possessor.
way too long.
You know, I like Possessor more than this movie. You know, Possessor has more of a plot than this movie, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean,
he's been out of it for a while. He was in Star Trek at one point. He was in Star Trek Discovery, just playing random side characters. So I love that David Cronenberg is still making movies.
Yeah, you got to go to see Crimes of the Future just to pay him homage, you know, because he's such a legend. But this is not my favorite one of his movies. I will say, minor anecdote. I have never seen Crash, the David Cronenberg film, and I tried to watch it after this, and I could not find a streaming version available for rent or purchase online.
Yeah. You were like, I need more upsetting universes for me to be in.
My appetite was wet for upsetting things.
People sexually aroused by car crashes. Give it to me.
Yes, 100%. And I couldn't find it online, so I actually bought the Criterion Blu-ray, and I'm going to plan to watch it this week, but maybe I'll talk about it during what I'll be watching next week. But anyway, Crimes of the Future. If you like Cronenberg movies, you're going to like this. If you don't like Cronenberg movies, or you're like a normal person, I don't think you're going to like this.
Don't watch it with your mom.
Yeah.
Are you normal?
Yeah, it's a good question. But it is definitely a movie I recommend for Jeff Kanata's mom, you know?
Yes.
Definitely check it out. So
sadly, she's not in town, but missed it by that
It'll be
much.
streaming soon. Don't worry. You've got a theater, Jeff. You can make it happen.
That's true.
On a previous episode of the Filmcast, Devindra Hardawar recommended Love, Death, and Robots Volume 3. I checked out a bunch of episodes from Love, Death, and Robots Volume 3. And I liked the David Fincher episode. Like, that was pretty good. But the one I got to call out is the final one called Jibaro. Did you see this one?
I also watched that one.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
It directed by Albert Mielgo. It is incredible. This is like one of the most. It's a short film, as with all the movies in Love, Death, and Robots. And the best way I can describe it is, it kind of tells a story, like this fantastical story. It reminds me in some ways of The Green Knight, probably because it has a knight in it. But it is shot in the style of a music video, which is really interesting because it's completely CG. And there are all these conventions of music videos, like, for instance, like really hardcore handheld shaky cam, for instance, that you don't expect to see in animated films. And the result is something that just feels really unique and unlike anything else, and is super duper intense. But I love
incredible
Jibaro.
Motion capture in that, because there's a lot of like dance.
I
to it,
heard
so
I read on somebody tweeted at me that they did not use mocap for this. Which I
Wow,
was just
that
like,
one
wow.
looks so real. Well,
Yeah.
okay, incredibly well animated. Also no dialogue in that one too. Like, it's just pure visual poetry.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, there is an interview where somebody said that it was really impressive that there was like he was being interviewed, and the question was it motion capture or was it done manually? And he says, no, it's keyframe animation. But he did do animation reference from a choreographer.
That's
so
bonkers.
it wasn't
That's pretty
mocap,
wild.
but it
That
was
is
like
pretty wild.
they had
To
references.
keyframe that is insane.
Yes.
That's wild.
So Jeff, you saw this as well. What'd you
I
think?
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's it sort of washes over you. I mean, I didn't love it other than the fact that I was just blown away by the visual mastery of CG animation. It's just, and you've never seen CG look like that ever.
Yes.
It's wild, and to think that's all keyframed that must have been so labor intensive. I can't even imagine. Like, it's wild. It's wild.
So, and Devindra, you saw it as well. You didn't call it out specifically, but I assume you also watched it. Right?
I feel, I forget if I mentioned it, but it is one of the ones I've seen. It is, it's really good. I like it. I feel like narratively, I wish it was a little stronger.
Yeah,
It goes
I agree.
exactly where I
can
thought
agree
it
with
would go.
that. I can agree with that.
But
It felt like
visually.
if you added like 10 to 15% more from a story perspective, it would have like really like added. There's some things we talk about where it's like, oh, they should have taken away 10 to 20% of the story. This is like, if you gave me a little bit more, I would like, it might have stayed with me more. So
I mean, it felt almost like a music video where it's like, okay, okay, this song did not deserve this much.
Fair enough. Okay, well, that's Jabaro. It's part of the Love, Death, and Robots Volume 3, streaming right now on Netflix. I want to just mention Ricky Gervais's new comedy special, Supernature, which has been attracting a lot of controversy and criticism online because of its jokes about trans people and the LGBTQ.
He can't stop like sticking his foot in that fire or like poking the fire.
LGBTQIA community and things of that nature. I just want to say two things about this comedy special, which I did not enjoy very much. And I have enjoyed Ricky Gervais's work in the past.
It feels really desperate, I think is the word I'd use for it.
Well, there's a couple things I think. Number one is, and I enjoyed Extras, enjoyed The Office. I've even enjoyed some of his comedy specials in the past. But number one is there is now a genre of comedy that is comedians reacting to criticism on Twitter that now becomes part of the act. And it sucks. And what I mean by that, when I say it sucks, is like the comedy itself is terrible. It is not funny at all. When like a comedian just spends a lot of time being like, and these people tweeted this at me. It's like, I do not give a shit. Like it is deathly to the comedic impulse to talk about
unless you have something incredible to say, do not do that.
Right. So, and Dave Chappelle did this for his last special, and like not necessarily Twitter specifically, but like, the reaction to his special, and Ricky Gervais has been doing this, and it's just like, it just feels really self-indulgent, unnecessary, and most importantly, not funny. The other thing that I wanted to say is that Ricky Gervais makes all these, theoretically says all these like terrible, objectionable things, and then in the special he points out that, hey, I don't actually believe those things. I'm saying it, and there is an irony, and he's literally saying this in the special. There's irony in the fact that I am saying them because I don't believe them, and they're terrible things. And that's what makes it funny. And there was a Twitter thread online about the guy, and I couldn't find it, but it basically asked the following question, which is, okay, you're a comedian, you say horrifying things, and people laugh at you and like laugh with you, and they give you money, and they're like, this is funny because you're saying all these horrible things. You're a bore, and you're boorish, and you're rude, and you're outrageous, and that's why people are paying you and coming to see you, right? That's why. But that's not who you really are, and he's relying on that difference, that distance, to make it seem like everything's okay for him to say all these things. The question is, if you've been doing that for years, at what point does that become you?
Yeah.
Does that, like, if your whole thing is saying terrible things, and you do that just for years and years and years and years and years and years, and you're saying terrible things over and over and over and over and over and over again, and it's not like evolving in any particularly interesting way. You're just like an asshole. That's your whole shtick. You're an asshole.
Mhm.
At what point are you just an asshole? You know, like it's an open question. I don't have a definitive answer, but it's what I thought about. It's like there's people, you know, like I guess I'm trying to think of like what even would be comparable. I don't know, like Jeff, you know, help me out here, but like
Jeff, you're an asshole.
No, but like
Tell
is that a reasonable, like you've been in the
No.
performing arts? Is that a reasonable question to ask? Like Andy Kaufman as an example, right? Like
Right.
is it reasonable, like if your whole thing is acting in an incredibly bizarre way in public or in a way that's like extremely off-putting to people, like at what point is that you? You know, like if that's the
I
thing you've
think-
been doing for years and years and years, is it, you know, is it possible to maintain that separation over like decades? Is the
Yeah,
question, right?
I think that is kind of an unfair question because I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that
that's I thought you would, so that's why I'm asking. you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Tell me.
also
Yeah.
think I'm not here to defend Ricky Gervais, but in
Sure,
the
sure.
abstract,
Yeah, yeah. Tell
in
me the abstract. Yeah.
I would say there is a tightrope to be walked that I think is plausible and legitimate
Mhm.
from my perspective.
Yeah, yeah.
To say that, and I honestly think this is Gervais's perspective, although I
Yes.
don't know for sure. But I think what he's trying to say is that when I act the boor,
Yes.
I am the butt of the joke. That
Right.
I'm asking you to laugh at the kind of person that would say these things.
Right.
That I am saying these things, and the reason you are laughing is because what kind of idiot would say those things?
Right.
And I think that's the line he's attempting to walk. Now, I can't speak to how successful or unsuccessful he is at it, but I do think that is something that I have done in the past, not with such, you know, sort of third-rate things, but it
Right,
is something
right.
I do find funny, is the kind of person that says, you know, you say a thing knowing that everybody in the room knows that that's a horrible thing to say.
Yes.
And we're laughing at the kind of people who say that, not the thing that was said, you know?
That's exactly why I asked you, Jeff, not because I think you're an asshole all the time or anything, but because I knew you'd have something insightful to say, which you just did, you know? And I agree with you. I think that's what he's going for. And I think he's not very successful at it. You
I
know,
think
like
his persona
that's a
doesn't
different
quite
conversation
sell that.
entirely.
exactly
Yeah.
right. I think
Did you guys ever listen to the Ricky Gervais podcast, like back in the day?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
2005.
Oh, yeah.
the
Yeah,
most
and-
successful podcast in the world, according to
Yeah,
you know, self-proclaimed.
It was a big
right?
deal, and I feel like that really unearthed his like true persona, and a lot of it was just being a dick. You know, like he may perform as a dick, but even when he's just lounging around and chatting with his friends, it didn't feel like he was generally performing on that show too much. You know, it's. I think after a certain point, I just realized this guy is just kind of a jerk to everybody. I guess that's the shtick. Except right now, it's potentially dangerous, I guess, and he doesn't understand that part, I guess.
It reminds me of like I remember when I was this is a weird like callback, but I remember when I was talking to Matt Singer once about. Do you remember when Joaquin Phoenix had a faux meltdown in public?
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah.
And it was, what was the movie he made? I'm Not Here or I'm Not There or something
I think
like
that's
that.
right. I'm not there.
I'm Still Here, I think. I'm Still Here is the name of the film. Directed by Casey Affleck. And I
Which
remember
I never saw, by the way. Did any of you guys see that?
I saw, yeah, we
No.
saw, yeah, I saw it. And
Oh,
I
is it good?
remember I wouldn't recommend it, but I remember it's the Crimes of the Future of Casey Affleck documentaries. I remember Matt Singer saying something to me, and I was just like, it's like stuck in my brain like a shard. Where he's like, Joaquin Phoenix kind of went on David Letterman. I don't know if you remember this, but kind of like had a meltdown on David Letterman.
Yeah,
Do you guys
yeah.
remember that? And like
Yeah.
that was like part of the act.
Oh, yeah.
And I was talking to Matt Singer about it. I don't remember if it was on this podcast or somewhere else, and he said something to me along the lines of, even if Joaquin Phoenix is faking it, that's still a thing he did. You know, like he still went on the air and like melted down in front of, you know, that's still a thing that happened. And it was perceived in that way, right?
And not everybody may be in on the
Right,
joke,
and not everyone
you
may
know?
be in on it. And so that's kind of the thing that I think, I don't know, just a really random reference, but it's like,
I think though, if
yeah.
I mean, I don't know how far down the rabbit hole we want to get here, but if you think about it you remove it from a sort of performance mentality and put it into a different art form. Like I'm thinking of like Mapplethorpe or something like the Piss Christ, you know, which made a lot of hay in the 80s for being this transgressive piece of art. like the feelings the exact feelings that people objected to were the feelings that the art was trying to elicit, right? That what it was trying to say exactly was the thing that people were saying. Like it was effective because of that, and just because it wasn't, the artist wasn't involved. I think, the same people that are objecting to Ricky Gervais probably would defend that.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I think it's complicated, because I think in a lot of ways, like that pot stirring, like no one goes, oh well, that person is that art when it's a different art form, because the words aren't coming out of that person's mouth in real time.
Yeah.
So I think
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I grew up in a conservative church, and I knew a lot of people who were really upset at the piss Christ.
Of course, yes.
But I think that people will really debate about how efficacious Gervais is at pulling off what you are describing. You are not talking about Gervais, by the way. You're just talking. I want to defend Jeff from anyone that's going to write in about. You are not talking about Gervais, right? You're just talking like in the abstract.
I'm just trying to talk about art in general, and like, is it fair to sort of peg the artist in I'm actually more talking about Joaquin Phoenix in this case.
Right. I guess I would say, here's what I would say. I think that in order to accomplish what you're describing, it's a high order level of difficulty, and I don't think Gervais is up to the challenge.
I think that's the main thing. Like
that's kind of what I
like.
say. Yeah,
I've seen a bunch of this special as well, and it is just so unfunny.
Yeah,
and
that's the problem. Is it's not funny. If it was funny, if it was
I don't
funny
want you to
or
deconstruct a joke for me. I would like if
if you need to deconstruct it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not. There's something is
I
not.
think that's
working,
a different argument, right?
Yeah.
I think that's like is it effective?
Right.
And
No. And I'm
I
glad.
can't speak to that, but the like I think if you watch sort of late stage Andy Kaufman stuff, where he like went really down the rabbit hole in all the professional wrestling stuff, and he like his entire shtick was like provoking people into hating him.
Yeah.
Like there's a very real argument to be made that like that is some messed up shit.
Yeah.
And I think you could make people sort of universally call him a genius, but like I think you could say the same thing. Like, at what point is what he's doing and his actual character intertwined?
Yeah.
Like he's laughing, right? He's laughing because you're angry, but you're actually angry, right? It's
exactly. So anyway, people can make up their own minds, but I think this has been a great conversation about what he might be trying to do with his newest special. But it's Ricky Gervais' Supernature. There's been a lot written about it online, mostly about how terrible it is. I did not enjoy it at all, like really at all, as a former fan of Gervais, and I wanted to reflect on why, and that's why I've been talking about it for the last 10 minutes. So thanks for listening to that, and Jeff, thanks for engaging and presenting kind of an alternative perspective, not on Gervais, but on like playing the bore in art in general. So anyway, that's what I've been watching. Divin your Hardware, what have you been watching this week?
I've been watching a little show called Obi-Wan Kenobi. Ewan McGregor's back, baby.
Yeah, baby.
You sound so excited, Divindra.
I mean, I was not expecting much going into the show, but you know what? I really like it. I am digging this Obi-Wan show. I figure you're just done with Star Wars now, Dave, right? You're never going to watch this?
I'm thinking of dipping back into
I
this.
heard you were done with Star Wars, so now you're changing it up on me.
Well, it's because it's Ewan McGregor, and I've heard Hayden Christensen. That's like a momentous event.
It's good. Sung Kang is in this, except you'll never recognize it's Sung Kang.
And Kumail Nanjiani.
Kumail's in this.
Right, so it's like there's enough going on here that I'm like, I'm probably going to dip back in for this one. But yeah,
I think it. So this is McGregor coming back to the Obi-Wan role at the point where he is protecting young Luke and potentially a young Leia too. And I think the show is doing some really interesting things, and it is more successful, I'd say, than whatever the hell the Boba Fett show was doing. I had fun with that on like a Saturday morning cartoon level type of thing. I think this one is genuinely like it is more interesting. It is doing things with the characters. It brings back some cast, some cast from the previous films. I will point just one out, and that's Jimmy Smits. It's really great to see Jimmy Smits like back in Star Wars, and also reminds me, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but Bail Organa the best character in Star Wars. The best
Wow.
character in Star Wars. What does he do? He's just
What's
a politician.
his deal, man?
Yeah. He raises his kid who's not his kid, but also he's a politician, but also secretly a rebel. Also secretly like making all this shit real. Training Leia to be the woman she will become. I love Bail Organa, I guess, or I mainly like Jimmy Smits, but I do love that he's playing this character who is secretly, I think, one of the best in Star Wars out there. The show is good.
Don't go into the show hoping there's lots of Jimmy Smits because he's
there
very
is some
little.
Jimmy Smits. There is some Jimmy Smits, and I will take whatever I can get right now. And yeah, a lot of people you expect will pop up. I won't say too much. I think it's doing a fun job. It kind of like gets bogged down with some like kid stuff at times, like and I think that's what people are complaining about. But yeah, young Leia is widely featured in the show. I think she is great. I think the kid is great, and I think where the story's going, and dealing with Obi-Wan's like guilt and what he is like losing his friend and what he owes the children of his friend, I think is all really well done. Also looks fantastic too. So yeah, I am digging it so far. I think we're like halfway through. Can't wait to see the rest.
Kanata Jeff, what'd you think of Obi-Wan on Disney Plus?
I could not disagree more.
Yeah.
I think this is everything that's wrong with Star Wars.
Yes,
right now.
This is what I've heard. Is that
it is everything that is wrong with Star Wars.
It like actively harms what we knew from the original.
It steals from A New Hope everything that makes this show interesting. Steals something from A New Hope. So every moment in A New Hope where you're like, oh my gosh, they're meeting for the first time. Oh my gosh, oh my god, no, evidently they met before, or they had all these interactions before. They did this, all this. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to me.
I feel like I don't consider that stuff holy, so I don't know.
Well, let me phrase it this way then. What question is this show answering?
I think a man who feels an extreme amount of guilt, like something I have wondered is like, what the hell was Obi-Wan Kenobi just doing in that desert?
I think it's pretty obvious what he was doing, waiting for this boy to reach a certain age, making sure he stayed safe, stayed hidden.
It also asks a certain questions like, what does he owe the sister? And I think that is interesting. The
idea that he knew. Mm-hmm. Okay, there is a point in episode, I think 2, the end of episode 2, that actually made my blood boil. If you care at all about Star Wars, which I'm less and less for me, sadly, it was the great love of my childhood. Mm-hmm. Now it just feels like it is being stripped for parts. Mm-hmm. But there is a point at which a character references a bad guy character references Darth Vader and says, "That's right, Anakin Skywalker is alive." And I'm like, well, fuck. If everybody knows that Vader is Anakin Skywalker, none of it makes any damn sense.
I could see your childhood dying or hear it
None
dying.
of it makes sense.
Did you think, was the idea that Obi-Wan didn't know Vader was like? I thought he was fully aware of everything.
But it indicates that the entire Imperial Army knows that it's Anakin Skywalker.
No, they're like,
why would
high
Luke
level
be hiding? Why would they call him Luke Skywalker? Why would he be hiding on a planet calling himself Luke Skywalker?
I mean,
if everybody knows that Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader.
You got to ask George Lucas some of these questions too.
No sense.
I never thought hiding Luke on Tatooine was ever smart. That's the other thing.
But that was ruined in the prequels. But the only thing that makes sense, the only way that A New Hope makes sense, is that they took this kid and they put him in the most remote, unvisited, backwards, nowhere planet, and they stuck one single former Jedi there to watch over him, and they tried to stay as quiet as possible. It doesn't make any damn sense that he's walking around in Jedi robes. It doesn't make any sense. And it certainly doesn't make sense that he had a whole friggin' adventure where he met every single person who he would later meet. It makes it dude, you want to do an Obi-Wan?
I feel like this hurts you somewhere, Jeff.
It does. You want to do an Obi-Wan Kenobi series, that's awesome. You want to bring Ewan McGregor back? I'm all for it. Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi is a masterful casting choice. You have an entire time period where he is having adventures with Anakin Skywalker that is not depicted. It is between episodes 1 and 2. He's training him. They're having all kinds.
You want a whole de-aged series?
You don't need
you don't have to
de-aging.
de-age
You don't
Ewan
need
McGregor.
de-age. Look at Better Call Saul, Devindra. You don't need de-aging.
Yeah, Ewan McGregor looks like he hasn't aged a day.
We're like 20 years later, and Ewan McGregor with the hairpiece, he's like, guys, believe it for Disney Plus.
Ewan McGregor looks. I would kill to look like Ewan McGregor.
He looks very good. But I mean, Jeff, I see your points. A lot of those stories were told in the animated shows.
Yes,
like that
that's
stuff
true.
has been covered
That's fine.
in the fiction already. I'm just saying, like right here,
This-
but
this
stuff
this
doesn't mean
answers
as much
no.
to me, so,
There's
yeah.
no question that, like, if you're gonna do a prequel, the prequel trilogy at least has a question like, hey, how did this kid become Darth Vader? That's an interesting question, right? If you're going to do a prequel, Rogue One, how did they get the plans to the Death Star? That's an interesting question. There is literally no question that we come into this series needing to know. It is manufactured. It's like, oh, well, maybe all these people that when they first saw each other thought they'd seen each other for the first time. Maybe they actually hadn't. Maybe they'd seen each other many, many times and had entire adventures together and bumped into the same enemies that it's recycled garbage. It's cannibalism. It's cannibalism, and it sucks, dude. It sucks. And yes, it's shot beautifully. It looks great, but it is a waste of everybody's time, and it really bothers me.
So, I disagree, but I'll also wait for Jeff's blood pressure to lower.
Sorry.
I mean, you know.
It's okay, Jeff. You're experiencing it for us, so we don't have to. But Devindra, you are currently enjoying Obi-Wan on Disney Plus.
I am enjoying it. I mean, I feel like I have fewer issues with this than I did with the Boba Fett show, which was like perfectly enjoyable as just like Saturday morning TV stuff. Where I do wonder, Jeff, did you ever see the end of that show?
I didn't watch a single frame of the Boba Fett.
Yeah,
show.
but you're like, hey, Obi-Wan, that's interesting. I'm gonna come back
in.
for that. That's my attitude too, right?
I do wonder, if what you would think of the end of that show. So that's all. I feel like once you calm down from this stuff, the Boba Fett stuff, you could skip some of the earlier episodes maybe, or just like put them on in the background. But I think there is some stuff there that will probably make your blood boil more, but also some pretty wild stuff in the Star Wars universe. So I don't know. I'm here for them doing interesting things, for them bringing back people from like freaking 20 years ago. Joel Edgerton is still here as Owen Lars, and he also doesn't look very different, and that is just wild to me. So I kind of appreciate like what this show is doing, even if it's not like, it's not breaking new ground for Star Wars, but I do think the idea of Obi-Wan wrestling with everything he failed with, wrestling with his life's mistakes is interesting. So that's why I'm watching it.
All right. Well, that's Obi-Wan streaming right now on Disney Plus. Devindra Hardawar, what else have you been watching this week?
Just wanted to shout out a movie called Emergency that just hit Amazon Prime Video. And I remember people were talking about this around Sundance, and I finally had a chance to look at it. It premiered on Amazon end of May, so everybody can watch it now. It's about a group of guys, a group of like black college students, and actually black and brown college students. Like there's a Latinx member too, and they plan this like major party night as they're graduating college, and their plans are interrupted when a drunk white girl just appears in their living room. And that is the premise of the show. And it's just very, very interesting.
The movie, yeah.
It's really interesting because it's like, oh man, we were gonna have this really like fun college, party movie, right? It actually starts out like that. Where you kind of visualize the parties and you kind of get the sense of these kids and like what they're into and how they relate to each other. One is like the straight-laced guy, one is the guy who's like more fun, and then this just kind of throws a wrench into everything, because I think immediately they're like, should we call 911? Is there any way this doesn't end up badly for us. And that is the movie. That is the premise of them trying to like figure out what to do with this girl, how to get her help at some point, while also trying not to, come down the bad side of the cops. And I think this movie juggles a lot. It is dealing with a lot of like very, very like serious racial dynamics, while also trying to be like a fun college movie at times. And I don't think it fully balances those two ideas, but I think it's worth watching. I think it's really worth watching because it is very real in terms of like how it's dealing with this situation and how how kids of color are just treated on college campuses too. Like there's a lot of that in terms of like the college experience that these folks have to deal with. So I think it can be a fun party movie. It certainly starts out that way, but it gets real, and I think it is worth watching to see like how harrowing this adventure was. Not entirely successful, but definitely worth a watch.
I really love this movie. I
Mhm.
would strongly recommend it. It's called Emergency. It's streaming right now on Prime Video. There is a scene in this movie
Mhm.
that features a white couple that has a Black Lives Matter sign in front of their house that I have not been able to stop thinking about. Since I watched this movie, 5 months ago, and that scene has stayed with me. Because I see a lot of Black Lives Matter signs in Seattle, when I walk around, I take my walks every day. And if you see the movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But I think it's sharp.
It's very blunt about everything it's saying.
Exactly.
But also
exactly.
things like that. Individual scenes from this movie will certainly linger on with me because I think it's really well executed.
Yeah, and
I
very
just feel
sharp,
like
very
they-
sharp in its social satire.
They
and
need to get
critique.
the balance down better. Maybe more fully realize some of the characters too. Like there are a couple women who are actually like introduced here who we never really get to learn about, like the love interests of these main characters. So there are things where I feel like they could have made this a more complete journey. But
It
I
did
think
start
what's
out
here
as
is
a
very good.
short. It was a short, and they kind of expanded it into a film. And I think, like,
Yeah,
to
you
the
could feel
extent that
that.
there are issues with it, some of
Mhm.
it might derive from that,
Mhm.
But anyway, I really liked it. It's Emergency. Stream it right now on Prime Video. Devindra, what else are you watching?
I just want to shout out Prehistoric Planet on Apple TV
Yeah,
Plus.
what is this? What is this?
What is
wait to
this?
watch
This is a it's sort of, it actually goes into all of our Jurassic Park watching right now. So I just turned it on. Did you guys know T-Rexes could swim? This show opens with, and apparently like this is the latest like scientific knowledge we have, is that apparently a lot of animals swim. Most animals swim actually, but this show in the opening minutes visualizes a friggin' T-Rex just swimming in deep water with their T-Rex babies. And I was like, this is astounding. It is. I have never seen this before. We are learning so many more new things here. So I was watching a bit of it with my daughter, and she's really into dinosaurs right now. This is a show that kind of tries to give us a look at the world in prehistoric times. It is narrated by David Attenborough because, of course, it is. But it is very much like a Planet Earth type of thing, trying to show us different areas in prehistoric times, right? They go over different environments like forests and coasts and freshwater and things like that. And I think the animation, like the CG, is just so good. We were talking about like the CG in Jurassic Park for our After Dark review of that thing, and it is just incredible now what we can do. Like make these animals feel fully realized. Certainly, it's easier if you don't have humans to like put on in the shots with them. But I think we've just like come such a long way. It looks incredible. At least watch the first episode to see some friggin' swimming T-Rexes. Just kind of blew my mind. The things we learn, and just like a simple image like that of a giant animal trying to swim and swimming really well, apparently, is what we know. It blew my mind. I'm trying to share it with everybody. Check out Prehistoric Planet on Apple TV Plus.
All right, Jeff Canado, what have you been watching this week?
And another thing, we're supposed to be worried about these characters in peril. We know that they're fine because they live for 30 more years. Sorry. Obi-Wan bothers me. I've been watching a number of things, including the first 3 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi. One of which is Norm Macdonald's Nothing Special.
Yes.
Which is an extraordinary thing. Norm Macdonald, of course, tragically passed away, had cancer for many years, did not tell anyone about it, evidently. And was, it seems, very close to the time he passed away, was going in for a procedure. And the night before he goes into this procedure, he decides to record an hour of material he had been working on and was unable to perform because of COVID. So he had been unable to get to any club. He had this special, and he was worried about something happening to himself. So he decides to just record it on a couple of webcams in his house.
It was an iPhone and a webcam, I believe, is what it was. And and this was like mid 2020. So this was before vaccines, before anything like that. So it was really shut down, and comedy, comics were having a really rough time of it back then.
Yeah, and I know that there are several comics that would try to do like Zoom meetings with people just to hear laughter. He does none of that. It's literally just him talking to a camera with no edits. It's one take that he did.
Yeah.
Clearly there are a couple of edit points that they could have done, and whoever produced this decided to just leave it in all. And he repeats a joke at one point because his dog barks.
Yep.
There's a phone call that happens, I think is a bit, but I don't know.
I don't think it's a bit. I don't think
you don't.
No,
because you don't hear the person on the other end of the line, even though he's holding the microphone right up to it. But maybe they took that audio out. I don't know. Either way, it feels raw. It feels. There's nothing like it, and of course, all of the added weight of knowing his situation and the fact that he has since passed, and so this is his sort of last comedic output of his life. And in a number of points, he very directly talks about mortality, but never talks about it in regards to himself or his condition. Never reveals his condition in any way. It's not in typical Norm Macdonald fashion. It is not revealing. In fact, he very clearly it creates nonsense aspects of his life just to get to a joke. He manufactures a wife out of thin air that doesn't exist just to make jokes about her. And then appended to the end of this hour is another about 25 minutes of some of his oldest friends: David Letterman, Conan O'Brien, Adam Sandler, David Spade, Molly Shannon, and Dave Chappelle, sitting around a table, having evidently just watched it for the first time and reacting and sort of telling stories about him and his life. I got very emotional watching this, and I found it very funny, but also very touching and poignant, and just striking in so many ways. I mean, he very much. I don't know what I haven't seen the Gervais special, but he very much hits a lot of those same third rails in a very Norm Macdonald-y way. So there is stuff that I think would be objectionable to some in the special as well. But man, what a thing, what a sort of artifact of his life. And there's this joke that you can skip forward if you don't want me to spoil this joke, but there's this joke about how he and his fictional wife, he doesn't say she's fictional, but he and his wife have decided to have a hall pass where you can have sex with anyone you choose. He says, my wife is so dumb. She's so stupid. For my hall pass, I picked Angelina Jolie and
Christy
Brinkley.
Yeah.
And my wife is so dumb. She could have picked anybody. She picked our gardener and his brother.
Yeah.
It's
amazing.
Like God tier joke. I mean, God tier. So, I mean, and that's just one of many moments that I just was rolling. Very funny, but that very Norm Macdonald, like absurd. I mean, so him, and he was such I think, comedic genius, and one of my favorite stand-ups. It's amazing to have this, and the format, the delivery, like devoid of audience feedback, and then also with that sort of, all these famous people that were friends of his kind of reacting to it. It's just. I highly recommend it if you were a fan of Norm Macdonald at all. Very, very interesting. I know Dave, you watched it as well.
I agree. It's weird. It's weird because I've seen Norm Macdonald live. I think he was a comedic genius. And this felt like watching a rehearsal of a comedy special. You know what I mean? Like because there's all this laughter that's missing from the special, and I think it's an incredibly valuable document. But it's also just weird because you're seeing the thing and then you're seeing an analysis of the thing right after, which is also
and,
weird.
and
right?
Letterman is so like he keeps hammering this thing of like.
Yeah.
There's no audience. It's not stand-up.
It's not
comedy.
stand-up.
Like,
it's not stand-up. You know, it's just
Yeah.
like okay, you know, but it's fascinating, and like the post discussion. It feels just as raw as the you know the special that came before it. It doesn't feel rehearsed at all, or that they had like gotten together and been like, you know, they put less preparation into that than an episode of the Filmcast. It seems like, you know,
and that's saying something.
Yeah, and that's saying so. Yeah, so it's weird, but I think it's super valuable, and there is some great material in it. But yeah, it's very much what you said. It's him saying all the jokes in his special into a webcam, basically, and occasionally cutting to an iPhone, and that is the whole thing. And I think it's great. My wife actually likes it more than like a normal comedy special because it feels more intimate.
Yeah.
Like it feels like you're
right
listening to
there.
a podcast. It feels like you're listening to a podcast.
I mean, more than even a podcast, because you're looking at him and you're right up in his face. You're in his grill, you know, it's wild.
Yeah. But anyway, I enjoyed it. I think it's very valuable and poignant. And yeah, the stuff about his mortality really hit home because, you know, he did not pass after he shot this, like immediately after, but he passed shortly afterwards. And those jokes obviously have like more of a meaning now. And it's all very thought-provoking and poignant, and it was, you know, I think it was nice to have the friends talk about it afterwards, because I think, I'm trying to think, like, what would it have been without that, right?
Yeah,
it would have felt like it was missing something.
I
right?
agree 100%.
Yeah. So,
it needed just like sort of this like moment of retrospection.
Yes, of like what is it that we just watched, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise you haven't seen really anything like it before. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's Norm Macdonald's Nothing Special. It's available right now on Netflix. Jeff and I both really enjoyed it. Jeff?
Yeah.
Speaking of stuff that's streaming on Netflix.
Indeed. Actually, I think this is on YouTube.
It is, but it's derived from something that was on Netflix.
Fans of the Filmcast will note that my number one movie of 2021, my favorite film of the entire year, was Inside by Bo Burnham. And on his personal YouTube channel, Bo Burnham has just released Outtakes, what he's calling the Inside Outtakes, which is a pretty brilliant title. You know, Inside, of course, was his stand-up, I guess you'd say stand-up, but his, you know, multimedia comedy extravaganza that is entirely created by him inside a room over the course of many months during COVID. And I think it is utterly genius, and I think it will be the landmark piece of art for this thing that was the pandemic, that is the pandemic. You know, I just think it for, at least for me, but I think it will stand as a sort of cultural monument to that in a lot of ways. It's just so beautiful. And to think that he had enough material to put in an entire new hour, which is what it is. It's edited. You know, I think Outtakes, it's a clever title for Inside Outtakes, but I think Outtakes is a bit of a misnomer because one thinks of outtakes as sort of flubs or mistakes or, you know, things that are attempting to do the thing but not doing the thing. This is not that. This is just like material he had that he decided not to put in the actual show, but is still well produced. It feels like another show, and it's incredible. Have you watched it, Dave?
I haven't seen it yet. I'm planning on it.
There is the final song, which I don't know how it didn't make the actual Inside, but the final song of this thing is a song that deconstructs the joke, "Why did the chicken cross the road?" It might be one of the most brilliant things I have ever witnessed. It is so, it works on so many levels, and the man is a friggin' genius, dude. So I will say all that to tell you, do not, if you are a fan of Inside, do not write this off as being just sort of like a blooper reel or something like that. Inside Outtakes.
This is like the Jackass 4.5 of
Exactly.
Bo Burnham's Inside.
Yeah,
you know?
it's just
like
stuff that didn't make the stuff didn't make the cut, but no less polished, no less effective, no less compelling. It's just more of that show. So if you liked that show, run, do not walk to see Bo Burnham's Inside Outtakes.
Which is available on YouTube. Also, basically a surprise drop for that one.
Yeah.
He just tweets out, "Hey, it's going to be up on YouTube in an hour," and then it's there. And this is the world we're living in now. So
yeah.
Okay, that is what we've been watching. Before we get to our review of RRR, let's do some weekly plugs. Weekly plugs, a part of the show where we plug something else we've been making. I want to plug a conversation I had on culturally relevant podcast Hacks season 2 just wrapped up. Weird season schedule for this one. They aired 2 episodes a week, and then it was 8 episodes over 4 weeks. So it's like a weird.
I think that's what they did with the first season too, though, isn't it?
I don't remember.
I thought it was
I recall
10
it being
episodes.
2 at a time. Oh, it may have been 10.
I thought it was 10
remember...
episodes. But yeah, it was like a weird. It's a weird number of episodes. Season 1 was 10 episodes. So, and season 2 is like 8 episodes, which is like a weird number of episodes. Anyway, point being, season 2 just wrapped up. I really love the season 2 finale.
It's
I thought it was very
yeah.
beautiful and
I
poignant.
haven't watched it yet.
One of the writers, producers of Hacks is somebody I went to high school and church youth group with when I was a child. He has now, sometimes the people you grow up with go on to write hit TV shows. Sometimes the people you grow up with go on to podcasts about hit TV shows.
An equivalent level of success.
Oh, totally. And I was really happy to welcome him to Culturally Relevant Podcast, where we talked about how he became such a huge success. He writes for shows like Silicon Valley and Hacks and The Good Place. And I think it was a really great conversation. So check it out, a Culturally Relevant Podcast. That's my conversation with Andrew Law from Hacks. Devendra Hardawar, your weekly plug.
Oh, I just want to shout out, I have a gift guide for new dads who are looking for gifts, or people who want to gift stuff to new dads over at Engadget. It's called The Best Gifts for New Dads. We got some cool things here, like earbuds. I think earbuds are great if you have a baby, and also tablets and things like that. So a lot of cool things here. I don't know if you do you guys have like a specific thing, Jeff? One thing that really helped you survive being a new dad? I feel like earbuds is the main thing for me. At this point.
That's a good one. I mean, I it's a whole kind of different angle, but like the tech of baby monitors and like all that stuff is huge. Yeah,
we had a whole baby monitor thing too. This one is just like for the dad. Like, how will the dad survive? And we have one for moms too, I think, at some point. But yeah, check out this guide.
Jeff Kanata?
I think folks have heard me mention the fact that I've been doing, I've been a sportscaster for the last 9 weeks or 8 weeks with the fan-controlled football league. It has been an extraordinary experience, and we've gotten to the final week of the season. The championship game is coming up this week. I will not be broadcasting that game. The other team, there was 2 teams. The other team is doing that game for scheduling reasons, but I will be doing the pregame show on the field before the big People's Championship for the fan-controlled football season 2. 2 awesome teams, a team that started out 0-4, then rallied and made it to the playoffs called the Zappers will be there, and the Board 8 Football Club. It should be a really, really wild, interesting, fun game. And I hope people check it out. It's been awesome. I've been going to Atlanta every weekend. Last weekend, Dave, I went and visited Devendra.
What?
At his house and his family. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Great to see Jeff. It's been, I guess, since Dave's wedding. I think that was the last
Yes.
time. But yeah.
It
Amazing.
was so cool. Yeah, it was really fun seeing. He lives in a lovely little neighborhood there, and in Atlanta, we had a good time, kind of hanging out a little bit. And it's been a wild experience going to Atlanta every single weekend for 9 weeks in a row. But this is the final one, and I think would be a fun one for people to check out if they're so inclined, if they're interested at all in the way sports is kind of being mashed up with technology. So you can see that game and all previous games. It's on NBCLX, it's on Peacock, it's on DAZN, it's on Fubo TV. But if you're digital folks like us, easiest way to do it is to check it out on Twitch, twitch.tv/FCF for fan-controlled football.
I also want to say patreon.com/filmpodcast is how you can support this podcast if you're enjoying this show and you want it to continue, patreon.com/filmpodcast is where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks. This week on the After Dark, we will be discussing Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. So be sure to check that out. Of course, we never want you to donate if it in any way causes you financial hardship. If you want to support us without donating money, very easy to do that. Go to Apple Podcasts or any other podcast platform. Leave a star rating or a review for us. It really does help. All right, let's get to our review of RRR. All right, that's a wrap on the main show. Thanks for tuning in to the chat room, folks. We'll see you later.
Thank you.